Hello and welcome back to Inquisitor Martyr. Last time we kept running more random missions and we're gonna keep doing that for a while because I want to see what the unique trait on this plasma cannon is. We're getting close. We're getting close to the kill enemies well under 50% HP, so we can see if this thing really balls out of control or if it's just kinda mid. I'm hoping it's really good, but considering it's focused around fear, I don't know what that primary ability is gonna be. What do we got? Rebel Guard. Right now I'm thinking I don't remember if it has to be my level or higher. We'll just do it. Huh, I don't have 200 influence in the torque system. Never realized that. So there's been some interesting rumors swirling around. Probably the most interesting one is there has been talk that Disney might buy EA. Which my first thought was, with what money? Because everything I've seen, they're not in dire straits, but they're definitely not doing well enough to just drop a couple billion on a company. But then I also started thinking about it, and initially I was like, oh god, they would screw up EA, and then I remembered, what has EA done well lately? I'm waiting for an answer because I got nothing. And some of the discussion I saw, people were saying, oh, well, they would just end up making a bunch of Disney IP things, and I'm like, yeah, and? I don't see a problem here. Hey, it'll get some of DICE back to making Battlefront. Yeah, Battlefront 2 wasn't great, but I think if they had another go at it, they might be able to make a game that doesn't suck. And I'd be fine with it. Because what else have they been making? Their sports games are terrible. The recent stuff for the current Madden, you had to do player versus player matches, but people figured out you could go into an offline mode, do 3v3s against bots, let them win, and you got progress towards the Halloween event. They just didn't know that was a thing. The logins were broken. The first day, you have to log in 21 days. The first day, I knew people who couldn't get their first day login to work, it just wouldn't register, while other people were getting the 21st day. How? No one knows. How do you break a login timer? That I have no clue. My guess is because especially these Madden games, the sports games in general, they just keep kind of just rehashing the same code, and especially you can see that in their player models and stuff. If you look at the Hispanic guys for their create a character, it's the same 4 faces they've had for a good 8-10 years. Nothing changes. But with that, I was like, oh, it's probably spaghetti code, because these things are so just mired in patches and updates that they probably just take whatever last year's code was and just shovel new things in. So it's probably just an absolute mess. That's why they can break a login. Because otherwise, I can't even fathom how you do that. because that is the simplest thing. You have the game essentially connect to your main server, and your main server time is the time. You just have a set thing of like 7 p.m. EST. That is the rollover. It's not that difficult, but apparently it is for a company that can pull in an easy billion per sport game every year. But that's what I was just thinking, is like, okay, so they're already terrible. Why wouldn't Disney have... They can't do worse. That's essentially what I'm getting at. They can't make it worse. Yeah, it's interesting, because that would be a interesting acquisition, but there is the fear of Disney. If they did buy them, they would probably just be like, okay, yeah, you do your thing, and we'll just have you make some of our games. And at that point, it's kind of bad, because really EA needs someone to step in and be like, yeah, stop doing this. I mean, look at Battlefield. The last good Battlefield was Battlefield 1. And even then, that's up for debate for some people. I know some people will say the last good Battlefield was Battlefield 3 or 4. I still like to argue, 2142 was a good game, but some people didn't vibe with it. Still glad that we didn't get a proper sequel to that game. If 2042 was 2143, I would have been real sad. I just want my Titan mode to come back. That was cool. Okay, what do we get? It's only a 4 stat, so I'm not going to use it. 4 stat. Nothing really noteworthy, which is fine. That said, let's check our... Okay. Oh, okay, that's not bad. Because we have an 11% chance to fear on critical hit, a 7% chance to fear on hit, and those two combined give us good odds. And then just, if they're feared, they deal less damage. Okay, I'm not actually at all disappointed with that. That's really good. Is it perfect? No. But it's definitely viable. I need to check something quick. Ah, it's heat damage reflection. Because we have that one point, the one slot in our inoculator, I think, or implant, and I was eyeballing something to put in there. Damage bonus for single target skills isn't bad. We could use it. I wish we could get the level 5 version, because it's like a 25% damage bonus. And that would be huge. Nah, we'll go without for now. We're doing fine. Yeah, we'll go Nurgle. Nurgle's easy. But on the topic of buying out and acquisitions, the Microsoft Activision buyout has finally solidified their stocks. Essentially, like, merged, because you couldn't trade Activision stocks anymore a couple days ago, and everybody was freaking out, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of what happens. But what was funny is there was this big chart of all the companies together now and all this. I definitely think if someone works for Activision, they should definitely keep their resume up to date, simply because that acquisition brought in 17,000 people. And I'm telling you here and now, they're not keeping everyone. First off, getting everyone kind of rolled over to whatever internal systems Microsoft has is going to be hell on earth. Even big companies acquiring like small 200-man companies can sometimes have issues, because in a lot of cases you're doing it by hand for some of the things. And then you also have matters like your security team. And I'm not talking like property security, I'm talking your cybersecurity, your ethics and compliance people, the guys who make sure if you leave you're not stealing company secrets. Do you really think they're going to keep all the Activision guys when Microsoft has their own department? It doesn't make sense. Why would you have two of the same department when you could probably take maybe half the guys, maybe a handful, move them over, and then be like, yeah, so we have all the people we realistically need now, so we're just going to dump the rest. There's that. There was the big chart showed all the studios under Microsoft and what they've done and what they're doing. And it's really funny because one studio that isn't Ensemble, because I know that studio, they were the guys who did like Age of Empires and all that stuff back in the day. This new studio, they had Age of Empires under them, and they had Age of Mythology. And I was like, yeah, you haven't touched Age of Mythology since like 2012, I think. And that was just the China expansion. Prior to that, it was like 2002, 2004, maybe 2005. Nothing's getting done. That is another dead franchise, tragically. And then under High Noon Studios, they had Destiny, which I had to get a good laugh at, because I was like, yeah, you don't... I think it's really deceptive to have that, because it's like, oh, look what we did, and it's like, yeah, you ran support for, like, the year that it was under contract, or the couple years they were under contract with Bungie, and then Bungie just bought out their contract and dipped. So, not exactly what I'd be showing off, but otherwise High Noon doesn't have a lot recently to show, considering them and a bunch of others are just Warzone support studios. Like, I think it was High Noon, Beanox, or somebody, they had Skylanders. The old Spyro, like, Wii game that you had little, like, action figures that you put on a little pedestal and it read, like, a chip in the bottom of them. And I had to laugh, because I was like, yeah, you haven't done anything with that since, like, 2013, 2015, I think. And that just died. So, if you don't think about all the things listed, it looks like they had a lot. But when you really look at it, you're like, oh, most of this is long gone. There's also talk of now reviving Guitar Hero. Activision being like, oh yeah, we're looking at bringing it back. And I'm like, did it really take Microsoft putting a proverbial gun to your head for you to go, oh damn, we gotta make games, guys? We're a company. We're a game studio. We're a publisher. We make game? That's what it's called, right? Video game? It's just, it's so goofy. And it makes me wonder just how much influence Microsoft had to be like, okay, you need to like do shit because we just spent like $70 billion and sitting around with Call of Duty and World of Warcraft and going, yup, that's it, man. 18,000 employees doesn't cut it. Which, if I spent that much money, I would definitely be cutting people if that was what I was paying for. That's that just floors me. 18,000 new employees. That's a small town. It's like I saw Overwatch, they have Diablo skins now. So you can play as Inarius or Lilith, which my first thought was, damn, you're really trying to push Diablo, aren't you? Your game population fell off a cliff in the first 2 months, and now you're just trying to make people remember, hey, we made this game, guys, please buy a copy. Buy the battle pass, please. But it's like, it's $40 for these 2 skins. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, first off, Overwatch. You're already kind of putting yourself behind the 8 ball with that game. And then you want to ask for $40 American for 2 character skins where Lilith was at least cool. Inarius didn't show up much, and he was just a tool. If you didn't watch my playthrough, 1, I suggest you do. 2, his whole story, like, arc can be summed up as, yeah, I helped make humanity and everything, and I want to go back to heaven, so I'm going to kill my son and the woman I helped make Sanctuary with, and they're still not going to care. That's it. His whole thing is just, he's stupid. And it's such a letdown of a story that it's like, I wouldn't pay $20 for a skin for that. Lilith at least was a bit more iconic. I still wouldn't pay $20, that's really steep. But it's just, oof. They're really trying to make back some of their investment here. I get the whole cross-promotion thing, but it's also kind of tiring. Like I said, with the games losing their way in their art design, they become storefronts with a little bit of game bolted onto the side to justify convincing people to spend $40 on 2 skins. It's unfortunate. Anything good? See, that would be good, except I don't have a way of gaining enrage tokens, so the damage up is moot. That flamer does not compare to this. Really? I mean, it is still better, but it still doesn't compare. Cooldown for all skills when surrounded. I would rather not have to deal with being surrounded. And slow on poison skill hit, moot. Let's go one more time. Let's go against Black Legion. Black Legion's fun. The talk of microtransactions, though, it reminded me, I saw this little bit of news too. Some indie game, Inkborn, I think? I don't remember, because I never heard of the game until the news bit, which also shows you how bad the indie scene really is when these games come out and nobody knows what they are. But what happened was they're apparently getting rid of microtransactions and battle passes because they believe that players are getting tired of them. And to a degree, I think they're right, but I think they're going about it the wrong way. Because I think your average person isn't tired per se. I think they're just tired of ever-increasing costs on them, a overall reduction in value in them, and the abuse of FOMO. For instance, let's look at any Call of Duty season. You get all the fancy cosmetic stuff in your battle pass, yada yada. The problem is, if you didn't play that season, those items are impossible to get. And I think that is part of the problem that no one is trying to rectify, and I think it is a net negative and is a disservice to these games and to the staff that made the cosmetics. What they should be doing is adding like a weekly or monthly challenge for players, and then having some of the tiers in battle passes, preferably, I would argue, free tiers, be what can be described as a vault credit or some vault dimma dollars. So when items go into the vault for the season ending, instead of those items being gone forever, what you could do is then go, okay, I'm going to go into the vault store with my credits, Dilla dollars, whatever we call them, and buy what I want. Maybe there's a character skin I really like that was available for one season. I can go get that. Because otherwise, it really alienates players who get a game late or just join a community late or whatever. And it lets players genuinely take a break and come back and go, oh, okay, I can catch up. I can still get what I want, and I don't have to feel like I'm getting garbage. Because we've seen that in a lot of battle passes, especially Call of Duty, where they're like, oh, hey, in this tier you get a skin for the rib boat. And you're like, when do I get to use a rib boat? And they're like, oh, it's Battle Royale exclusive, it's Warzone. You're like, okay, cool, so this is a waste. Or it's certain vehicles that are Warzone exclusive where, for some people, that's not worth it. And if you miss those tiers, who cares? A great example of all this is Nightwave. If you play Warframe, you might be familiar with it. It is a non-paying battle pass thing they do kind of between content. And during content, realistically. And what it is a bunch of little missions. Oh, this week, go defeat the Ropalo list once. Defeat 100 enemies with radiation attacks. Beat 8 waves of Elite Sanctuary survival. Just do a bunch of random junk. And if you beat them all and you got some leftover stuff from a week before, it'll just fill back in, so you always have something to do, unless you are 100% caught up. But then you would get pass levels and get some little cosmetic things. Oh, here's some armor fear operator, or here's some little extra armor doodad. Here's a weapon mod for a very specific weapon, like the Batacore, or the Oculist, I think, where it made it so when you got a critical, it would create like a energy tentacle that would attack nearby enemies. Little things like that. And then it would give you credits that you could buy extra stuff, some resources, whatever, and they would last for the season. But you could also buy some consumable stuff or whatever, and then at the end, usually every so often they'd have like a themed one, like the Glass Maker, where you had a little story go with it, and then there would be like Nora's Mix, which was just a bunch of old stuff kind of mixed in. There was a couple new items towards the end, and so if you already got something, you would just get more credits for that season to then go into the shop. Maybe you need more Nitane extract, or you never got Valbin, and you can go buy his parts. You can get cosmetics and a bunch of junk in there. And I think that's really good. Hell, I wanted that for Dust 514. I thought that would be a good system to keep people kind of doing like weekly objectives, and then you just get resources to buy some gear. Stuff like that I think is very good. And it doesn't rely on FOMO. And my big question with these devs trying to walk away from all the microtransactions and stuff is, what are you going to do about funding? Because first off, it's an indie studio. You're not seeing Activision be like, nah, I don't want copious amounts of money from people who have no self-control. I don't care if people complain. I'm still getting money from people who will pay $100 to skip a battle pass, then pay me another $30 for the Black Cell version, and just rake in money hand over fist. So it's like, these smaller companies, what are you going to do for money? Because, like I've said, the industry is not in a good place for indies. This isn't 10, 12 years ago where, like, the indie scene was so small, everyone knew what Fez was. Everybody knew what Cave Story was. Even if these games were incredibly archaic and simple, everybody knew them because there was only a handful of indie games really coming out. Now it's a lot worse, so unfortunately you kind of need that money to stay afloat, especially for, I think the game's multiplayer. The description I saw was just like, it's an RPG. And I was like, okay, so that is not a good descriptor, because it's usually you have something before the term RPG to explain it, like turn-based, or single-player, MMO, multiplayer, you know, something to kind of give us a little bit of a framework to build upon. But it's interesting to see devs finally going like, hey, maybe this isn't actually the play. And it could just be that their business model is bad. If it's a single-player RPG, yeah, you're not going to get people paying for a battle pass. It's insane. Also, you could probably exploit the hell out of that. I would. If you're making me pay $10 to do a bunch of crap within a couple months' time, I'm exploiting it. You can't stop me. It's a single-player game. I'm honestly surprised WoW hasn't done something like that. Or maybe they have, I don't know, I haven't played WoW in years. But the question too becomes, what's the next monetization stream? Because there's always going to be one. People won't go back to map packs. I guarantee it. It divided the player base way too much. And you just had, as we saw with Call of Duty back in the past, you would have the sweatier people with all the map packs, so people would intentionally uninstall them to get more casual players in their matches. Which actually, that leads me to another tangent. I saw people talking about Modern Warfare 3. I was going to play the beta, do a video on it, but it was 100 gigs. And I was like, there's no way in hell I'm wasting 100 gigs on a beta. You can condense your damn file size. And everything I saw, people were like, oh, it's better than MW2, but if there's skill-based matchmaking, it's going to ruin it. And I was like, oh, so it's going to be ruined. Because there's no way Activision just magically drops that. So we'll have to wait and see, and I give it a month, maybe, before the... Actually, no, that's too generous. I give it a week before the complaints roll in of SBMM being too hard on people. Yeah, it's going to be interesting trying to find what the new revenue stream is. Do we go back to loot boxes? Because it's a possibility. It's, God knows some countries are already cracking down on it, so it's going to be rough trying to get stuff in there. Do they actually try to go with crypto? The sad part is it might work, simply because we're seeing more governments look at like centralized digital banking currencies, so more or less like crypto dollar. Because there's like, this is sort of inside baseball, but US stable coins, so a coin that is, its value is kind of locked to a US dollar. So you could have things like that, and then wheeling and dealing with that. It's just... I'm always worried people are going to turn these things into jobs. Rich, coming from a guy who makes videos all the time about video games, and kind of wants to do this, like, full-blown, but... yeah, it's a risk, and I don't like that. I think we're in the best situation. I just think there needs to be more consumer-friendly options placed into our current system. And then it'll be fine. But until then, it's a little iffy. Let's see what that, seasonal mission's looking like. We got time. But we do have a skill point. Yeah, we're gonna keep going. Definitely thinking health is gonna be the play. Get that up. Then definitely dip into defense. Because these are... actually, that one is not along the way, but at least this one's along the way to getting this. Huh. Yeah, this might actually give a lot of survivability. The deflect is moot, but what can you do? Ooh. Psalm code. That might actually be the one we need. See, if this was a 5-stat, this would be really good. 200% duration on all vulnerability debuffs. That armor is bad. Critical hit strength per active Psalm Code Doctrine. If this actually had slots, that would be extremely dangerous. Simply because if you wanted to, you could rock 1 Psalm Code Doctrine, 2, 3, I think potentially 4? And if you had 2 weapons, you could do a 5th one here, but even just 4, you're looking at 32 critical hit strength, which would hit pretty hard. But you have to leverage a lot, and you have to have a lot of stuff going for you to really reach that. Still neat, though. But that is all for now. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit the like button. It helps out the channel a lot. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.